Great. Thank you so much, Nikki. Um, so we will have a question and answer period at the end of this webinar. That should be roughly around, I'd say, 11 a.m. And so from 11 to 11:30 a.m., you'll raise your hand and then we'll call on you to ask your question. In the meanwhile, today we plan to take you through the state application process. So this program is a federal program that's administered by the National Park Service, and it requires two layers of competition. The first is that states are required to first conduct outreach, review applications, and then propose the most competitive and complete applications to National Park Service for consideration. We'll go over the timeline, but that will happen towards the end of April, where states are required to submit applications to National Park Service. Before that, states must first solicit applications and screen applications first. So that's why we have a initial state application deadline that's ahead of the National Park Service national competition deadline. So that tends to confuse people sometimes. Um, we'll go through the difference today and make sure you're clear on what to do to apply through California, which I'm pleased to say it's a much easier process and it's a quick application. So my hope is by the time you're done with the workshop today, you'll be clear on the next steps for our state application process. We're excited about this round. This round is offering an amazing opportunity to request up to $15 million per application. So you can request up to $15 million per project application. A common question we have received in the past is there a limit to how many applications an applicant can submit? Or is there a limit to how much California may receive through the national competition? And the answer is there is no limits currently. You can submit as many applications as you're able to prepare. And also, there's no set aside amounts per state. So it's possible California can receive a substantial amount. We're really proud of our legacy in California, where we're one of the only states, if not the only state, that has participated in all 6 rounds of this program. But I'm going to tell you that while we've been successful and we've also secured some of the most of the grants compared to other states, this program has not received a lot of applications in the past. To be frank, we receive about 5 to 10 applications per cycle. So our hope is that with $15 million on the table per application, with that max, we're hoping that this will attract more applications and that we can submit some applications to National Park Service that will lead to substantial improvements in communities throughout California. So we need you to help make this program successful. Okay, next slide, please, Nikki. Prior slide. Thanks, Nikki. So today's agenda is we will go over the intent of the program. The program is to fund new parks and new outdoor recreation opportunities. So it is construction projects or land acquisition only. We'll go over the process timeline between both the state process, the national park process, all the way through completing your project. And we'll go through eligible applicants and eligible projects. Kyle will lead you through a detailed review of the state application requirements, and then we'll cover the timeline and next steps recap. Finally, at about 11 a.m., we'll have a 30-minute question and answer session where we could have a group discussion, and you can raise your hand at that time, and we'll call on you. Okay, next slide, please, Nikki. So this is our state application website. It's parks.ca.gov/ORLP. Everything that we present today will be focused on our state application website, and again, focusing on our state application requirements. Okay, next slide, please. Program intent. The intent is to fund communities that have that lack access to outdoor recreation opportunities or are deficient in access. So it's a need-based program. You'll see when we get into the federal, there's a federal tool which evaluates if the project is in a disadvantaged community. So we'll explain how that works. The program funds acquisition or development of new parks or substantial improvements to existing parks. And here's a key. The project must be located in a city or town with at least 30,000 people. So a question we received in prior webinars is if the city is in a heavily urbanized county and the city population is below 30,000, can the city still apply? And the answer is no. It needs to be the project needs to be in a incorporated city or town of at least 30,000 people. Okay, next slide, please. So funding, approximately 224 million is currently available nationally. Now, while that may not sound like a lot of money for a nationwide competitive process, I will tell you that in the past, less was requested than available. So in the prior round or two rounds, on the national side, there were less in total requests through all the states than available money. So our hope is that you will help us help National Park Service in terms of sending some stellar applications to National Park Service this round so that we can hit that target. Again, the maximum amount per application you can request is $15 million. We will get into match in a few minutes. There is a match requirement. The minimum you can request is $300,000 per application. So don't be shy. If you have the match and you have a project that will fit the program intent, you can be aggressive. We're not going to be shy as well with what we submit to National Park Service. So if you have match, you can request up to $15 million per application. Okay, next slide, please. The prior slide. Thanks, Nikki. So there is a match requirement. And yeah, this is it. There is a match requirement. The program can fund up to half of your total project cost. At least half must come from a committed match source. So in other words, your grant request can be up to 50% of your total project cost. Your grant request can be up to 50% of your total project cost. That means the remaining balance of your total project cost is match. So you need to start approaching this program with what is your total project cost. As we go through the criteria, we're going to lead you towards understanding what type of scope would be most competitive, and then you'll determine your total project cost, divide that in half, and that tells you how much you can request for up to 15 million. So here's a few examples. Let's say your total project cost is $30 million. That means you can request up to $15 million through this program. Another example is a $10 million total project cost. You can request up to 5 million. Okay, next slide. It's also a reimbursement process. So thinking ahead, in the federal guidelines, there are no allowances for advance payments. So you have to be prepared to cash flow your project. The way the payment process will work is when you, let's say you submit $1 million of costs and your grant request was 50% of total project, our admin team will then reimburse 50% of the costs that are submitted. So if you submit $1 million in costs, half of it's match and half of it would be the reimbursement amount. You can request incremental payments. The payments do take a while to get processed because they go through both our department and National Park Service, but you can request incremental payments. You don't have to wait to complete the project to get one final reimbursement. But again, the key is you have to be planned to cash flow your project and then get reimbursed. Okay, next slide, please. So eligible applicants. Public agencies are eligible. Cities, counties, park and open space districts, special districts with authority to acquire, operate, and maintain public park and recreation areas, all state agencies, federally recognized Native American tribes, and joint powers authorities. Well, all members are otherwise eligible under the program. So for a joint power authority to be eligible, it has to involve members that involve the prior list above. Nonprofit organizations are not eligible under the federal statute for this program. However, a nonprofit organization can still be a partner behind the scenes. So a nonprofit can partner with an eligible public agency, perhaps help with the planning, et cetera. But again, nonprofits are not eligible applicants. Next slide. So here we have the process and timeline. So National Park Service requires all states to first conduct competitive reviews of all applications.
Victor, did we lose you?
I think we did. You want to take over, Kyle?
I'll take over. So as you see here, so NPS requires that all states first conduct that competitive review of applications before being forwarding the selected applications to the national competition. So for that reason, OELs must have an application deadline months ahead of the NPS application deadline. So you'll see that the OGLs or our application deadline is January 31st, 2024. We've got a review period of March 2024 through April 2024. And then we, as a department, are going to be submitting these applications to the NPS April 30th of 2024. So then NPS has to go through their process of reviewing, and it's estimated that they will be making a selections November 1st of 2024. We go to the next slide.
Kyle, before we go to the next slide, I just want to point out here on the left slide, thanks, Kyle, for covering. I got removed from Microsoft Teams, so I really appreciate that you were ready to jump in there. Great job, Kyle. So just so you all know, if your initial state application is selected from the January 31st application, sometime in early March is when we're likely to notify you to proceed with a full federal application, which National Park Service calls the NOFO. And in that time span from March through April is when we'll have an additional workshop with the selected applicants and be available to work one-on-one with you to complete your application. And we'll almost function like consultants in terms of really getting into details about your narrative and your criteria response and your cost estimate to ensure that we help you put your best foot forward with National Park Service. Because once we submit the application and it goes to national competition, we're able to give you advice because we're not part of the final decision making process on the national level. For that reason, we're able to give you even a guidance on your narrative, your criteria response, et cetera. So that's going to be the key period to help you complete your full federal application from March through April. Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Victor, did you want to continue on with the next slide? That's you.
Sure. Okay, so if your application is selected through the national competition, again, that will occur sometime in November of 2024. You'll then proceed with what we call the post-selection federal requirements. And that involves your cultural, historic, and environmental review, also known as Section 106 and NEPA. We'll have experts available to help you with those requirements as well. National Park Service has to review the final documents, make sure that you have both cultural, historic, environmental clearance to proceed with the project. And at that point, you'll be issued the funding agreement, which we estimate the earliest the funding agreement will be received will be sometime in 2025. But if your Section 106 and NEPA environmental review process takes longer, then of course that will extend the period when National Park Service can issue the funding agreement. So it could be any time between 2025 and 2027, depending on how long it takes to complete the cultural, historic, and NEPA environmental review. So we had a question earlier about um, using costs that were already incurred for construction as match, and the answer is that would not be eligible. Um, your cost for match have to be consistent with what National Park Service will allow for the grant itself. So you cannot start ground disturbance, i.e. construction, on the property until your federal clearance has been given for both NEPA and Section 106 Cultural Historic Review. So for that reason, the project, which is both the grant request and the match, the project construction cannot start until National Park Service gives you the final approval to proceed after your environmental has been reviewed. At that point, once you have the funding agreement start date from National Park Service, you will have 3 years to complete your project. There are possibilities for extensions to that 3-year period if there's a need for it, but plan for completing your project within 3 years after the funding agreement is secured. We'll give you another recap of this timeline at the end of the workshop. Okay, Kyle, you're up. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Victor. Yeah, if we go to the next slide, perfect here. So let's continue with the brief overview. Then I'm going to get into California's application in detail. We're going to look at this eligibility criteria. If you go to the next slide here. So one of the eligibility criteria is population. So projects must be located in incorporated cities and towns with at least 30,000 people. Next slide. Disadvantaged communities. So projects must be located within a community that is determined to be disadvantaged for the climate and environmental justice screening tool. And we'll get into that tool a little later on. Next slide. So land acquisition, development for outdoor recreation. So projects must involve land acquisition, development, or both for outdoor recreation. And so a big purpose of this program is outdoor recreation. Just keep in mind, so community centers, recreation centers are not going to be eligible. So also, it's got to be open to the public. So projects must be outdoor recreation areas and facilities open to the general public and not limited to special groups. And next slide. So projects cannot be within a park or a site that has received land and water conservation funding or ORLP grant funding within the last 7 years. All right. So as you'll see here, these are the eligibility criteria for this program. And if we can go to the next slide. So now that we've covered the overview, we're going to get into the details about what information is required for California's application. I'm going to hand it back over to Victor for just a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. So it's really important, again, that you work out of the California application only at this point. And Nikki is currently showing you where that's found on our website. Okay, so Nikki, if you can give a live tour of the website, and we'll give them a quick overview and then show them where that link is found. Okay, so first thing is you do is you go to parks.ca.gov/ORLP. and then you'll click on the application process link. Okay, so thank you, Nikki. We have the overview information that we just covered. There's a link to submit your application. Kyle will cover the online application system in about 15 minutes. Keep going down, Nikki, a bit lower. And there's eligibility requirements information. The process and timeline that we covered is on that page. And then there's the link, your California application requirements. This is all we need for you to submit your application to us. It's just give them a quick scan, Nikki, of this page. So there's about 5 eligibility questions to confirm you have match available, your understanding of the timeline, that you either own the land or you will be the landowner, and then we get into the criteria with how you score points. So Kyle's going to take you through each of these questions in detail, and then Kyle's also going to give you a preview of the online application. These questions are also found inside the online application with guidance, but this is just for those that want to preview before you create your application account. Okay, Kyle, you're up. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Victor. Yeah, so Nick, if we go to the top of this page. All right, perfect. So the responses in the online application will provide the following information. And we've got eligibility requirements. We got number 1 here at the top. So the project is in an unincorporated incorporated city or town of at least 30,000 people. And then we've got item number 2. So projects must be located in a census tract that is determined to be disadvantaged per the Climate and Environmental Justice Screening Tool. So there's a website here, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at how this tool works. So Nick, if you want to click on that tool. So applicants will use the tool to determine whether the project site is located within a disadvantaged census tract. So at the top of this map, you'll see there's an area where you can enter an address. And we're going to go to 715 P Street in Sacramento, California. Once you enter in your address here, you're going to hit that magnifying glass. And it's going to bring us into a census tract way too close, though. So we're going to back it out with the minus bar here. Keep going, keep going, keep going, a little more. Okay. And so if you kind of look at this map and you see that there is a darker gray overshadow on some of it, those are going to be disadvantaged communities. So if you click on that one right there, Nikki, perfect. You're going to see it draws a line around it, the census tract, and over to the right-hand side, a little lower, you're going to see identified as disadvantaged, yes. And so this tract, as long as the park is within that census tract, then it is an eligible site. Now, if Nikki were to click one of the light gray areas on this map, you'll see over on the right-hand side, identified as disadvantaged, no. So this site would be an ineligible site. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the program webpage. And we're going to take a look at item number 3. So committed funds and reimbursement process. So ORLP is a reimbursement-only program and requires the applicant to cash flow 100% of the total project cost, with the understanding that ORLP can reimburse up to 50% of the total project costs. For example, for a $30 million project, where the applicant is seeking $15 million reimbursement in ORLP grant funding, the applicant must certify they have the committed funds to complete the $30 million project. Also, all non-federal, so state, local, or private sources are eligible for match. Federal sources eligible as match for this program are Community Development Block Grants, called CDBG funds, Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, also known as FAST funding, Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program, or REPI funding. All other sources of federal funding are not eligible. For the purpose of this proposal, committed means the money is already secured. The applicant will list each funding source and provide the dollar amount of that source. So Now, down here, yeah, we got reimbursable cash flow source. So the amount needs to equal the ORLP grant request amount for up to 50% of the total project cost. This is the funding that will be used to cash flow the ORLP grant amount until an ORLP reimbursement is processed. For example, general funds of an agency may be identified to cash flow the ORLP grant amount until the reimbursement is paid. Now, funding sources proposed for match must be committed and must total at least 50% of the total project cost. If the applicant listed and certified state and local, private, or eligible federal funding match sources that equal the total project costs, the understanding that ORLP can reimburse up to 50% of the total project cost equals an eligible project. Now, committed funds are not available or more fundraising will be needed. That is going to be ineligible. Next is item number 4, timeline confirmation. So the applicant's going to certify an understanding of the state and national competitive review timeline for this federal grant program. This program requires states to receive and review applications before applications may be forwarded to NPS for entry into the national competition. So Victor's going to give a recap at the end of today's workshop on that. Next is item number 5, confirmation of land ownership for public outdoor recreation in perpetuity. Okay. The applicant's going to certify that it owns or will own the project property and agrees it will remain as a park for public benefit in perpetuity, also known as forever. Okay. Now we're going to get into the project selection criteria. First, we have the project summary. This is limited to 250 words or less, describing the project deliverables, and this is not scored. For scoring, the following criteria will be used. We've got 1A, type of project. So applicants will identify which of the following categories is applicable to their project. We got either a new park, so that's a project site that has not been a public park in the past, and if the grant is awarded, the project will acquire land for or develop a new public park where one currently does not exist. Also, another category is expand existing park. So the project includes adding acreage to increase the official boundaries of the existing park. The project may also include improvements within the existing park boundary. Next is improved park with no expansion. The project will take place within the existing park boundary and does not involve adding acreage to increase the size of the park boundary. As you'll see here, points for 1A, the highest scoring here is going to be new park for 10 points. Next, we move on to 1B. So this is new outdoor recreation features. While renovations of existing features can be part of the project, the purpose of this section is to check what new outdoor recreation features are proposed, as this will make the project more competitive for the National Review Committee. The new recreation features must be outdoors. Projects that create multiple new recreation features to significantly increase the number of people or user groups that may be served will be the most competitive. Now, if you look at 1B here, this is the new outdoor recreation features scoring. You're going to see 4 or more new outdoor recreation features are proposed, will score the highest for 20 points. All right, and now we move on to 1C, green spaces. So the purpose of this section is to determine how the project will increase access to nature by creating new green spaces, natural themed features, such as natural playgrounds, community gardens, etc., and shady areas via tree cover. In addition, other considerations should include natural landscapes that help cool the air and reduce urban heat island effects, reduce pollution, and have positive effects on mental and physical health. So applicants will describe how their project creates new green spaces, natural landscapes, and tree cover. So the points for 1C, green space, we're going to see the highest scoring is projects that create substantial new green spaces, natural themed recreation features and landscapes, and tree cover compared to other statewide applications. We'll see 15 points. Now moving on, criteria number 2 is the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, also known as SCORP priorities. Applicants will describe how the project meets the SCORP priorities. So to be eligible, the project must meet at least one of these priorities. Projects that meet multiple priorities will be more competitive. So consider this guidance of the SCORP priorities. We've got number 1 here, which is new park access. The response should describe how the project will qualify as a new park or expand an existing park. SCORP priority number 2 is preservation. The response should describe whether funding by the Land and Water Conservation Fund was previously granted for part or all of the project site. SCORP priority 3 is multi-use parks for all ages. The response should describe how the project will be designed to address one or more of the following. A, designed to bring families together by supporting art and music, sports, and multi-generational activities. And B is supports different active and passive recreation interests of all ages. Or C, incorporate project design ideas from all age groups. Now, SCORP priority number 4 is the health design goals. The response should describe how this project results from asking community members for their park design ideas for public health. And SCORP priority number 5 is safety and beautification. The response should describe how this project includes enhancements for A, safe public use such as lighting, netting, strategic location of features, etc. Or B, beautification such as landscaping to make the park more welcoming. Note, very important note here is that National Park Service will not fund public art enhancements. So points for meeting the 2021-2025 SCORP priorities are, if you have all 5 SCORP priorities will be met between the project elements, that is going to score the highest amount of points, which is 15 points. Now, the total maximum number of points for both criteria is 60 points. So the information we just covered will be entered online into our online application system called Submittable. Nikki, we're going to go back to the application process section of the ORLP program webpage, and then we're going to look at the Submittable link up here. And so we got the top one is a link to Submittable, and then the link below that is a link that's going to show you a video preview of how the application looks on the inside of the platform. So, yeah, do we want to go through the platform right now?
Sure, let's do it, Kyle.
Let's do it.
Sorry.
All right, so if you're here, you're on our program web landing page for Submittable, and you're going to click on the submit application for the ORLP program. All right, we're going to scroll down here. There's some information that we'll cover on the next page. So just go all the way down. Nikki, you're going to enter the address of where your agency is located and then hit the next button. There's save address and continue. And here you go, we're in the application now. So I'm going to show you a few things right here at the top, right there. If we go right back up a little, right there, perfect. So a few key things about this program, or about the Submittable, is this first line under keep the following in mind in preparing applications. That the online application platform operates best with Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and Apple Safari web browsers. The platform does not support the use of Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge. And so the person who starts the application is called the account owner in Submittable. So only the owner is going to be able to see a submit application button at the very end, and only that person is going to be able to submit that application. There's also the ability to add collaborators to this, and we'll get into that in just a little bit here. But the collaborators, they will not see a submit button. All they're going to see is a save draft button. And then at the bottom of the application, there's a save draft button, and we'll kind of get into that as we go. So if we could scroll down just a little bit here, Nikki, a little more, and perfect. So what you'll see here is you're going to see some red asterisks next to some fields. Those red asterisks, that means it's a required field. So if you get down to the bottom of your application, you hit submit, and it's not submitting, chances are you left out information on one of these key and required fields. So just go back up and make sure those are complete. Like we talked about, you can add collaborators, so multiple people can work on this application at the same time. So you click on that Manage Collaborators button at the top. You're going to add the email addresses of individuals you'd like to collaborate with in real time. They're going to receive a link and have access to the form until you complete the submission. So remember, as the owner, only you will be able to submit the application. Okay, so here it is. We're going to kind of go through here. We're going to scroll down slowly all the way till we get to the bottom. But what you're going to notice is there's a lot of technical assistance with each of these items. We've got the eligible census tract here. We've got a little showing you what that looks like. Again, identified as disadvantaged. And you're going to upload a screenshot that looks just like that, just a little bit below this. All right, and we just keep going all the way down. Okay, and we keep going. Okay, so this is what the bottom of the application looks like. Remember, these applications must be submitted before January 31st, 2024, before 5 p.m. Now, if you look down here at the bottom, we've got a Save Draft button. You can click that as you go. And only if you're the account owner, you'll see a Submit Application button, which will need to be clicked before January 31st, 2024 at 5 o'clock p.m. All right, and so that's kind of what submittable looks like. So now we're going to go back to the slideshow, and we're going to go to slide 19. Next slide. Okay. So we do invite you to get familiar with the online application system now. Please do not wait until January 31st to sign on for your first time. I recommend creating an account soon or today and looking at the application. You can save and edit the application all the way up to the deadline. So the application closes on the dot at 5 o'clock p.m. Late applications will not be accepted. So get in there early. You can save your draft and then come back to it. Remember that we cannot see your draft until you click the blue submit button on an application. And so that blue submit button must be clicked before 5 p.m. January 31st. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Victor.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. So as you can see, everyone, the initial state application is designed to be quick and easy for you to apply through us. It is because timing is of the essence. So Nikki, if you could please go to the next slide. We have to work backwards from step 3, which is the April 30th, 2024 deadline for California and all other states to submit applications to National Park Service. So we received the federal guidelines a few weeks ago, the same time you all may have through a National Park Service press release. And then we have to, scramble to review the guidelines and establish a process and work backwards from what date we have to submit applications to the National Park Service. So that's how we have step 1. Getting this question very often, why are we requiring applications on January 31st if the federal guidelines say that applications are due April 30th? And that is because we have to solicit applications and review your scopes and ensure the projects appear eligible. So that is why we have step 1. There are no forms required for step 1. You don't need an authorizing resolution from your city council or county board of directors, because we do know that takes a long time to schedule and we have to move quickly. So the purpose of your step 1 application is to screen your project for eligibility. That's why when you reviewed the questions and criteria that Kyle presented a few minutes ago, you'll see that it's basically checking your awareness of the match requirement, checking your awareness of the timeline, ensuring that you are aware that if the project is funded by this grant, then the park will remain open to the public in perpetuity, which is a great thing if your goal is to preserve a park for future generations. This federal act gives additional protection to ensure that the park remains open to the public in perpetuity. So from step 2, when we review your initial state application, if selected, you'll receive notification sometime in early March, I would think. And from that point on, from the rest of March through April, we will help you complete your full federal application. Now, if some of you received the National Park Service guidelines, you'll see there are quite a bit of forms in there. Those are forms that most of the forms are forms that the state completes, and it does require expertise. They are somewhat complex. So a team will help you by telling you what you need to complete from the federal guidelines during March through April, and then we will also be working on the federal forms that we have to complete, also working out of the same guidelines. So by April 30th, if your application is selected, we will submit the full and complete application into the federal application system, and then it goes into the national competition. Step 4, the national competition is expected to conclude sometime around November of 2024. So a little bit less than a year from now. If you are selected around November 2024 by National Park Service, you'll then move on to step 5, which is to complete what we call the post-selection federal requirements, which again is Section 106 Cultural Historic and NEPA pathway. So we'll have two experts, which are great to assist you on how to complete that process. It generally takes about 1 year to complete. So from sometime in 2025 to 2027, and it really depends on how long step 5 takes you. But if step 5 moves quickly, then it's possible that sometime in mid to late 2025, National Park Service would approve your project. If it takes you 2 or 3 years to complete step 5, then National Park Service, of course, would issue the project at a later date. Now, a key is that you cannot start construction for either what your match is paying for or the grant request until step 5 is complete, and step 6, you have a start date approved by National Park Service. So again, we had a great question from Eric earlier when we started today. Can you start the project, or if you're under construction right now, can those costs be eligible for match? And the answer is no. Only construction costs that start from the date of National Park Service approval, which is step 6, will be eligible for either match or for the grant reimbursement. Okay, step 7. After you secure the start date funding agreement from National Park Service and you'll receive a grant agreement from us, you'll have 3 years to complete the project. Okay, so plan for 3-year completion from the date National Park Service approves the project. Now, there is a federal process for extensions if needed, but our hope is that the project could be completed within 3 years. Okay, so that's the overall timeline. And Nikki, if you could please go to the next slide. Okay, the assistance doesn't stop today. In about 5 minutes, we will go live with a group discussion, so you can go ahead and ask your questions. But if you have more questions from now through January 31st, we'll have a team available to assist you. That is your competitive review project officer. Nikki, if you could please be so kind as to go back to the website, or let's show them where that is. Okay, this is what the list looks like. Your contact will be the person on the left side in the green row, where the title of that column is the competitive application pre-award project officer. For example, if your project is located in Alameda County, then your contact will be Esmeralda. And so, they're all friendly, helpful people. They enjoy helping. They're excited about this unique opportunity where you can request up to $15 million per application. So please take advantage of the team if you have any more questions on the initial state application. We do ask that you focus on the initial state application as much as possible, so we can at least get you through the first step. And then again, if you are selected, we will then give you a lot more technical assistance on the entire federal process, working out of the federal guidelines at that point. So that again, that will be sometime in early March. Okay. And Nikki, if you could please go back to our website and let's show everyone where that link is found at parks.ca.gov/ORLP. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, so we're back to the home page of this program, and you'll see on the right side it says project officers by county. So that is what you want to click on, and that is the chart that Nikki just shared with you. Nikki, if you could be so kind as to also put the link in our chat, that would be great too. Thanks a lot, Nikki. Okay, at your convenience. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we got a question about past awards, and I think one of the projects that's received some national attention is a grant from Round 6 to create the new Sweetwater Park in Chula Vista, which will transform 29 acres of coastal, environmentally degraded, and formerly industrial use into a new park that will provide nature play areas like natural themed play areas and trails, wildlife viewing platforms, and picnic areas. So it's going to restore the habitat of the area and create a natural themed passive park. We've also received selections from National Park Service for you know community city parks, pocket parks in heavily urbanized areas, etc. So it could be a new park or renovation. Um, there is a 5-point difference between a new park and renovation, but you can easily make those points through the rest of the criteria. So I would not discourage you from applying for park renovations as well, as long as you feel it will meet the rest of the criteria. Because again, a key point here is that we've only received 5 to 10 applications per round in rounds 1 through 6. So with the opportunity to request up to 15 million per application this round, we are really encouraging you to apply and hopefully we can get some grants awarded to California that will transform cities and towns with substantial projects. So we are here to help, and we look forward to helping you throughout the application process all the way through January 31st. And then again, if you're selected sometime in early March, we will then work with you on completing the federal application. Okay, so at that, our presentation is concluded. Now you can raise your hand and we can spend the next 30 minutes answering your questions. So go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Also, the unmuting issue has been solved.
Great.
So once we get some questions and some hands raised, once we call folks, you should be able to mute or unmute yourself at this point. All right, we have a question from Megan Horn. Megan, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, I have a question about the location of the sites. So do sites that are within unincorporated county areas qualify if they're within an urban area?
Yeah, great question. So the federal guidelines do say that it has to be in a incorporated city or town having at least 30,000 people. So so unfortunately, projects in unincorporated areas would not be eligible.
What about if like the entrance of the site is in an incorporated part, but the majority of the site is not?
That's a great question. If you could email Kyle,
Okay,
yeah, email Kyle some more information, and we can forward that to National Park Service.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So the question was, if part of the project is in the jurisdiction of a incorporated city or town with at least 30,000, but the other portion of the project area is not, would it still be eligible? Megan, would the applicant be a city or town with at least 30,000 people, or would it be a county or?
it would be a county.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's a great question. We'll get, if you can send some more information to Kyle, like a visual would be really good. If there's a visual of the boundary,
Yep.
we can then forward that question to National Park Service. That's a good question. Okay. And then we'll have to, of course, go back to also make sure it's in a disadvantaged census tract as well. So if you can include that information too, um, make sure National Park Service considers that too.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. And Angie, a resolution is not required with your initial state application. So in the online application, it actually is already designed to be a form for you, and whoever submits the application as the contact will certify that you have authority to apply on behalf of your agency. It's just that we understand that resolutions can take months to schedule, often, especially with large cities and counties. So we are trying to accommodate the initial state application screening and help you be able to apply as quickly as possible so we can start our review quickly. So great question, Angie. No, all we need right now is what Kyle presented in the application, in the initial state application requirements section on our website. That's all we need. So all you have to do is go online and answer the questions in the online application system, and that's all we need. Nothing else at this time. Okay, next question. The resolution is also not needed for the federal review process. All we will need for the federal review process is what is required in the federal guidelines. And National Park Service does not require a resolution. Okay, good question, Eric. Okay, next question. You can raise your hand or ask your question in chat. Okay, we have a question from Dennis. Can a project be submitted if a master plan with the community is at its very beginning? We just got a consultant on board. I'd say first of all that what you apply for is you definitely want to be clear that's what you intend to develop. So if you can, start your planning with the community and conceptualize what you can do with your grant request plus match by or before January 31st, then absolutely yes. If you're not sure what you are planning to construct or what your scope is for the project by the state application deadline, then there should be another round next year. So, we don't think this program will go away. It seems like there's more momentum on the national level for this program. So there may be around 8 sometime in 2024 that you could apply for, Dennis. Okay. Okay, I see a raised hand. Go ahead and Christian, go ahead and ask your question. Unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Victor. So our organization is exploring using CDBG funds as a match for this funding opportunity. I was just kind of trying to understand how, because for this funding, the funds need to be committed. And in order for us to I'm just trying to understand the timing of it, how that typically works. I don't know if you've had any experience with any other organizations that have leveraged CDBG funding for this, and I'm just kind of trying to see if there's any pointers that you can give on how to use that funding for this.
Okay. So the easiest thing is if you've already received a funding certificate or other memo that specifies how much money is available to your agency through CDBG. And then it's my understanding that, once you have that discretion of how much money you can apply for, you could then submit a project application. So I think you just have to get the certification from the CDBG folks of how much money you can apply for, because it is discretionary funding. So I think the way the process works with CDBG is generally once your agency receives notification of how much you can apply for, you submit an eligible project. We do know that parks are eligible. And CDBG is one of the few federal funding sources which are eligible for match. So National Park Service is used to working with CDBG situations. But I guess, do you happen to know if you've already allocated your prior amount made available to your agency? Do you happen to know when your next certificate will be given? That didn't. Yeah.
No, I don't oversee that specifically, but and I wish our CDBG expert would be on the call for this, but I want to say that we're kind of in the process right now for submitting for next year.
Okay.
So I would have to circle back with them on this, but I think I have enough to kind of explain it to them, and then if we have any other questions, I think we can email you guys.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Sounds
Thank
great,
you.
Christian. Thank you as well. Yeah, I think the key in your situation, Christian, is there, to ask your CDBG folks, is there any money currently available that has not yet been allocated to a project? And if the answer is, yes or no, that you can move from there. But also, when will the next apportionment happen? If
Got
it
it.
hasn't happened
So
yet.
we could use the next apportionment to as would that be considered secured in our case, or
Yeah, as long as you get confirmation from I would ask for confirmation on the federal side, if they can confirm how much will be available, and it's essentially guaranteed. But if it requires an act of Congress and they're unable to verify that amount, then it would not yet be considered committed.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. Great question. Okay, who's next, Nikki?
All right, looks like Saba Engineer is next.
Okay.
You can go ahead and unmute.
Great. And Saba, you have to click the microphone symbol, which should be in the top right of your screen, to unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I'm planning to apply for a new park for the city of Atlanta. It's on the city-owned lot, so
Okay.
no right-of-way acquisition. Now, this park already received a small grant from your department, so I can use that as a local match.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So there's
And
mhm.
one more thing, my the person my I'm Adelanto is in San Bernardino County, and the lady who is assigned as a project officer, Julianne, she is very good. I've been asking her questions left and right, and she's very quick in answering. So I really appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's good to hear. We'll let Julianne know.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, she's great.
She's great, right? Thanks.
Thank you as well. Very nice of you. Okay, next, any more questions? Okay, I see, let's see here. I see another question from Pat. The question is in chat, one of the eligibility requirements is that the applicant owns or will own the land, the project site. If the grantee is not able to own the land, can it transfer the land to a public agency? So for this program, because of the perpetuity requirements, where if the grant is awarded by National Park Service, the property must remain open to the public for outdoor recreation use forever. It is best that the um, applicant is proposing to either acquire the land or already owns the land. So what I would recommend, Pat, if possible, is to have the public agency that the land would be transferred to be the applicant. And it could be proposed as, I'm not sure what the land situation is, so we probably have to meet with you in more detail after this webinar on another date. But if your organization owns a property and you're thinking about transferring it, you could do on the national side, you could do an acquisition and construction proposal where there's a agreement to transfer the property should the grant be awarded. And so that's one possibility. But we can work with you in other scenarios once we understand more. Okay, great. Thanks, Pat. Okay, so the question is, by when must the applicant and grantee own the land? So if you're, this question's from Alyssa in chat. If you're applying for development only and you're not requesting funding for land acquisition, then you need to own the land at the time of the initial state application to us, which is January 31st of 2024. If you are proposing a land acquisition and or construction project, but basically if you're proposing that your project will include acquisition, then you don't have to own the property until after the federal environmental review takes place. In fact, that's a requirement that if your project involves a transfer of land, involves acquisition, that and it's going to be funded, if the land transfer, the land acquisition will be funded by federal funds, then you have to wait until the what we call the post-selection federal requirements are complete and approved by National Park Service. And again, that's your environmental NEPA pathway and your Section 106 cultural historic review process. So to recap, if you're applying for construction only, then you need to own the property by January 31st of 2024 when you apply to us. Or if your project will involve acquisition and you are requesting federal funding for the acquisition, you have to keep the acquisition on hold until after National Park Service approves the project for those costs to be eligible. Okay, any more questions?
Hi, Victor. I don't know if you saw the first question from Eric at 10:06 a.m. in the chat, and there's one also from Moira at 10:30.
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, so for Eric, it's the same logic for match. You would not be able to use match for construction costs that occurred before the date of National Park Service. And that, of course, also involves like the Section 106, Cultural Historic, and NEPA environmental review. The other thing is that, so Eric's mentioning what's called a waiver of retroactivity. A waiver of retroactivity is basically something that there's not a lot of time for this program, this round. But basically what it means is you still have to complete Section 106 Cultural Historic and your NEPA documents for National Park Service before a waiver of retroactivity can be approved. And again, that can take about a year. So Eric, if you've already completed Section 106 and your NEPA documents, because maybe there's other eligible federal funding attached, let us know, and then there's a better chance of getting a waiver of retroactivity approved through National Park Service. But other than that, I think it will be a pretty tight timeline, because you'd have to basically incur those costs on your own at your own risk if you start doing the Section 106 and NEPA pathway now, before National Park Service approves a project. So if you do want to explore that further, please send an email to our team, and then we could do a deeper dive on timing, and if we could figure it out and work with National Park Service on the potential before you go ahead and spend funds on the post-election federal requirements.
Okay, yeah, this is Eric. Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
Sure.
So yeah, we don't have any federal funding, so we haven't started that yet.
Okay.
And just
Okay.
to confirm, it sounds like even if we did get the waiver of retroactivity, it would only apply to design. Is that correct?
So the waiver, if you get the waiver of retroactivity, what that basically allows you to do is it allows you to start incurring costs even for construction before National Park Service issues a funding agreement. But it causes confusion, and National Park Service has been a little more reluctant to approve those because I guess there's been a case in another state where there was a misunderstanding and folks thought it meant the grants would be awarded too. So a waiver of retroactivity basically allows you to proceed with the entire project at your own risk before National Park Service gives you final approval. But to do so, you still have to complete the post-election federal requirements. So there's definitely a risk on your part to incur all those costs without knowing if the grant will be selected and awarded.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that clarification. So if it did all work out, we could proceed with that and then kind of count some of that funding as match that we spent during that waiver time. Okay.
Correct. And just timing, like since it's already December, and National Park Service thinks they'll select their projects in November of 2024. If you were to start your cultural historic Section 106 and NEPA pathway now, by the time you're done, the national competition would be probably already concluded. And then you might discover that National Park Service is not selecting your project, and then you've already, incurred federal costs on cultural historic Section 106 and NEPA without getting a grant. So we'll work with you in more detail on this, but it's an unusual process. The waiver of retroactivity is unusual, and it's not highly used. is, so I don't want to confuse people, the rest of the group here, on that. It's not a very common process, and I don't think the timing would work very well in most cases. But we can, if the city, Eric, wants to proceed with, incurring those costs at its own risk, we could work with you more on timing to see if it's feasible.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Eric. Okay, Nikki, what was the other question? What time was it?
Moira, it was around 10:30.
Oh, was it the NEPA question? Yeah, I
Yep.
think I
Oh, okay,
responded.
good.
Yeah, I
Just making
responded.
sure.
hmm Okay. Okay, any other questions? And we'll hang around until 11:30 in case you can think of any other questions in the meanwhile. But I think our main point is we encourage you to apply with the, hopefully you'll find the initial state application to be easy to apply for. That's the main goal. Thank you too, Dennis. Or Denise. Any more questions? Again, our team will be available to help you all the way through January 31st, and if selected, through the initial state application, from March through April, we'll help you complete the federal application. And a lot of your responses from the initial state application will be available to basically be copied and pasted into the federal application. We designed it that way. We're having you focus on the state SCORP as one of the criteria because that's in the federal guidelines. So you'll be able to recycle quite a bit of the information that you submit in our application as well. So we'll help you with that. Any other points you want to make, team? If there's anything else that came up with these questions and answers you'd like to add to the discussion?
Done for me, thank you.
Okay.
I did want to add one thing that there is for this round of ORLP, there is one priority and that is for nature-based parks. And so we kind of went over that and talking about the criteria of the green spaces, but natural parks are a priority for this program this round.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go there real quick. Let's go to the Nikki. If you can scroll down to the, and we'll show you what that information is requested, and expand a bit on what Kyle said, since we have some time to kill here. If you'd like to hang out, otherwise you're free to leave. But Nikki, just go to the website so folks can kind of see what that is again one more time, please. Just the ORLP, our main website. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, so we'll give you one more reminder of all the information we need is in one place. And that is go to our main program website, click on the application process tab, and then scroll down until you find the application requirements sublink. And there it is, California application requirements. So all the information you need that you'll enter in our online system is here. No forms. And if you scroll down to greening, which is item 1C. So what Kyle was talking about is you can also have in your park project other outdoor recreational facilities, but we are going to score you on 15 points or 10 or 5 based on how substantial the project will create new green spaces, nature themed recreation features and landscapes, and tree cover. So we had a good question in a prior webinar of what if it's an existing park and there's substantial tree cover already with ample shade. You can give us that information within your response to this criteria 1C, but your project should still create um, other new green space areas within the park or nature themed recreation features. So what does that mean? We give examples of natural playgrounds. That's kind of an emerging trend. Community gardens. It could be trails in more of an open space or natural area. It could be like orchards or a plaza with orchards, et cetera. So those are all examples of natural themed recreation features. That doesn't prevent you from also applying for other outdoor features that are not nature themed, like, skate parks, sports courts, athletic fields, running tracks, outdoor workout stations. We got a question yesterday about dog parks. Are dog parks eligible? Yes, they are. You have a wide range of outdoor features that you can apply for. But to score well, what Kyle's saying here is to score well, to get those 15 points, you do want to have a substantial greening components within your project scope. So if you're applying for an existing park, you could also maybe enhance the landscaping, um, maybe add some bioswales or other features around the parking lot that can help make the parking lot look more attractive while also serving as a filter for urban runoff from the parking lot into, the sewer system or streams, etc. So you do want to try to beautify the park with additional landscaping and greening, and make sure you do have some nature themed recreation features as part of your scope. Okay, thanks, Kyle. It's a good tip. Okay, any more questions? If there's no more questions, we will close at 11:30. Okay, so I saw a question from Pat. Is this funding likely to be in existence in near future years if you're not ready this year? While we can't guarantee it because it's basically subject to federal action, including Congress. We do believe that since there has been this is now 7 rounds, there's definitely, I think, momentum going towards this program. And we're hearing that there's a desire to make this program permanent too. I do think, Pat, it's likely, but I cannot guarantee there will be another round next year. But however, we do advise you all to seize the moment if you can, carpe diem, knowing that you can request up to 15 million per application. That's the most funding this program has ever made available. And for that reason, we're definitely putting an extra pitch here for you all to help National Park Service commit those funds at the $220 million federal target, and let's help California shine. So, we really appreciate all the work you do, and we're here to work with you in partnership to help California shine. So we really, really encourage your applications this round. Yeah, so Matt made a comment. The challenge is the matching grant to see if you can get it committed in a short turnaround. We definitely understand that. Definitely understand the match can be a challenge. We've also relayed that information to National Park Service. Unfortunately, to remove the match requirement, it would take an amendment to the federal act, and that's a discussion we've had with National Park Service, just letting them know that the match can be a challenge. But we hope, you know, we hope that there's enough projects out there where you do have match to take advantage of this opportunity. Okay. Any more questions? We'll wait one more minute. If there's no more questions, we'll close at 11:32 or 11:33. You're all free to leave otherwise, and thanks so much for your interest and good luck, and we're here to help.